5 years old. Went to grab onto it and it just exploded. All of it's like that. Hi guys, Redneck Computer Geek here. As a YouTuber owning a vehicle, you will get plagued on a certain part. Have you tried it? Have you replaced it? Have you done it on that vehicle? With the Ford Ranger, it is these. They're rear spring assisting shocks made by Gabriel. They're part number 43167. I'll post a link in the description down below. Now, many of you will notice I also have a rear spring here. And anybody who watches the channel on a regular basis will know that I just replaced my rear springs recently. And I put on these helper springs. These killed my brand spanking new springs recently. And I put on these helper springs. These killed my brand spanking new springs. These were an Amazon suggestion that I listened to, and I never should have. So when these go on, they go on like this. And you have a clamp that goes around right here. The problem is, the way this spring is made, there is a plate in between here and the rest of the pack, so there is a gap here. What ended up happening was the clamp walked itself out to this point and actually compressed my spring and flattened the whole rear of it. That leaves us at a very interesting point. I managed to catch one side before it got totally ruined. It is still pretty flat, but it's usable. The other side, on the other hand, is horrifically flat and bottoms out the tire. So we're going to measure up the totally flattened out spring side. We're going to measure up the half flattened out spring side. And then we're going to swap this in for the flattened out spring side and measure that and see where we end up with these all said and done. Let's grab a tape measure and get started. Let's start with the side that I caught almost in time. We are at a little bit, if we go where my pinky is here, a little bit above 33. Now, if we come around to the other side that I didn't catch in time, we're at 32, a little bit under. So I've got a full inch of distance change there. And now this, with any left-hand turn, ends up grinding on the inside of my fender. Alright, let's pop out the 5-year-old Monros, see what happens. That, focus, is an utterly boogered spring. See how the pack is all screwed up? And if we come back here, there is no clearance whatsoever, just flattened right out. So this is what we're replacing. All you do is just take out this, and then up top, if I bring this around, there's going to be another one right there. And you do the same thing right there. And right there. So that spring there, you can see the pack is still together for the most part in the front. It's got a curve to it. It's not a flat. But back here you can see where it got damaged by the compression piece. See, it slid back and squished it. Alright, let's get these replaced. For those of us who live in the Rust Belt, life as a mechanic requires a few more brain cells. This is how you get a shock off up here in Maine. You slice this piece, you tip the whole shock up 90 degrees, you cut into there, you pry it around, you cut this piece off, you take a cold chisel and you put it into that and you knock it open, and that is how you get the bolt out, which I still need to do right there. That is why mechanics in Maine and other Rust Belts laugh at Southern mechanics that are just like, oh, it's a 5-minute job. That one bolt That took me 15 minutes. I really couldn't find too much on these when I first started to Google them and look them up, other than a bunch of S10 Chevy guys complaining that these things were too long or like an inch and a half longer. Well, I don't know. There's that. And there's that. I mean, maybe Chevy guys add an extra 2 inches when they're a 1/4 inch too short? I don't know. Tell me in the comments down below. People make fun of these little scissor jacks all the time, but that was just the right job for it. So I was able to take the scissor jack, lift it up, pry on it with a big pry bar, get the bolt started. Now I just need to wedge that side up just a little bit. We should be good to go. This is exactly why it is Rust Belt Mechanics. Just don't bother making YouTube videos. Five years old. Went to grab onto it and it just exploded. All of it's like that. Well, I just could not manage to get that in without lifting the entire frame. With this spring as dead as it was, or is, or however you want to word it, I just couldn't manage to do it. So we got a washer there. We got our 15mm. By the way, if these are factory, these are 18mm on both the top and the bottom. So we're going to get that done. We're going to get that one there using our swivel. And then we're going to take it for a test drive with this. And then we're going to come back. We're going to do the measurements. Then we're going to put the new spring in, which means I have to undo this thing in order to be able to get the new spring in. Yay me. And then we'll try measurements again. Out of curiosity, just bringing down the lift here, let's see what we're at. Just a little under 34 right now on the really bad side. Let's go take a look at the other side. Need to do some cleaning on this end. And on this side, we're actually right exactly the same level. Now granted, I would not load a few thousand pounds because right now all it is just sitting on those helper shocks. But if I had to be able to get to work after breaking a spring in order to go get paid, I think that's 85 bucks well spent.
But it does still need that O-ring done. Well, nothing else is leaking.
Yeah.
And you can get that bowl off without without pulling the carb. So, yeah.
Had to take a break from working on the Ranger. I'm over here with another YouTuber. Jerk of all trades, right?
How you doing, guys?
I'll post a link for him. He works on stuff like this. Back to the Ranger project. Ran around, did some errands, about 200 pounds of trash and tires and stuff, and you can clearly see that that side is settled, so we definitely need to put a spring in the back. Here we are, dropping out the leaf spring that I managed to screw up. So on this, it's going to be an 18 to a 21. As you can see, the nuts on these are pretty soft, so be careful. If you need a budget-friendly air impact, I'll post a link for this down below. It's an AIRCAT 1431. Now, as you can see, I'm hooked directly to this and not one of those little slinky cords I usually use. And that's because this thing, in order to do its full power, requires a straight outright connection. That is okay up until the 3rd setting, but to use the 4th and the 5th setting on this AIRCAT, you need full outright 1/2 inch hose. But anyways, so we got those dropped off. Those are 18s. We got the other side undone. We got a jack there, a couple of jacks underneath there. And now we just drop this thing out. Pretty straightforward. Whatever you do, be careful you do not accidentally take out your brake line. Otherwise than that, pretty simple. Oh, and you may have to undo that in order to loosen everything down through to get the new spring in. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now I'm sure that this is not the safest way to do this, but this is how I install these springs. So what I do is back here, I get it put into here first. I make sure that my pin is lined up right in here so that it's catching in there. And then I come up here and I run a ratchet strap from there through there, being sure not to crimp the brake line, underneath the cab and into this hole in the frame here. Ratchet it up, pry it down, and put a bolt in. Obviously, it's going to settle once I get it out on the road, but the coilover shocks definitely did not make up for a dead spring. At this point now, we're sitting at 34.5 inches up at the top of the bed. So over the course of all of this, we've gained back about 3.5 inches. When we started this whole thing, I could just barely get my hand in underneath the fender. I've now got over my entire hand width there. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, leave me a comment down below. Tell me what kind of Ranger you drive and how much mileage do you have. Let's see who's got the highest mileage. Thanks, everyone.